Sheriff, you cut mine. I do. Look, this time. Everybody else watch. You watch it.
Mr. Hill?
Judge, how are you? Not much.
Did you see that? Nobody reached out to you?
I don't have a clue.
No, I mean, did nobody reach out after you took out?
I've got this big.
Okay, that's what you said.
Brian asked if we were gonna do an appropriation. It's out of my hands.
I'm trying to, I can't remember. I saw you send a note out.
Yeah, Dwight's wanting to pay those invoices. I mean, I only have one. It's at a bank up in New York.
P. Inez will lead us in the pledge and prayer.
We're going to take a moment of silence, and I welcome you to connect in your meaningful way. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right, we have an ordinance to add to the agenda on paying for the bond counsel. Do I hear a motion that we
I
add
move we
this?
add that item to the agenda, Madam Chair.
Okay, do I have a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. All right, is it, all right. Okay, I have an item I would like to present. I would like to go on and present that we add the ombudsman to the agenda. Even though we do not have an ordinance for it, we know it was passed out of committee last night. Mr. Lester has not had time to write an ordinance for it, which means that unless we have an ordinance for the quorum court, it's going to be delayed 1 month. If it passes, it will be delayed 1 month longer. And this is, I think we need as much help for Sheriff Helder as we can get, and this is why I'm going on and suggest that we add this to the agenda, and hopefully Mr. Lester can work with someone maybe and have the ordinance ready by next Thursday night. Yes.
Let me ask Mr. Lester, don't we have an ordinance that we passed earlier this year that all ordinances have to be passed by a committee before they can go to the quorum court?
Yeah. Yes, you did pass that, and your rule states that it can be added to the agenda at quorum court, but the rules have to be suspended like any time else to add it. I mean, there is a way for it to be added at quorum court, and so it'd just be a matter of suspending the rules and adding it to the quorum court. You've discussed it at the last meeting, yet last night. You've discussed it again here today. I doubt that if all of you want to have that ordinance on there, and there's no reason that you cannot do that.
Well, unless there's something in the details of the ordinance that were to cause.
Correct.
Okay. Well, Madam Chair, I'll move that I take back the motion I just made to approve the agenda and add the ombudsman discussion to the agenda tonight with the option that we may forward it on to the quorum court for consideration as an ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
All right, we have, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Thank you. Ordinance passed. All right,
I now move that we
So-
adopt the agenda as amended.
okay. Is there a second? Second. All right, we have,
Lance and adding to the agenda text.
what?
A point of order, you just said an ordinance passed?
No, I did not. I did, well, I may have, but that's not what, okay. We passed it out of the jail committee last night.
I got that, ma'am.
Okay,
Chairman, my question is, you just stated an ordinance passed, and
okay.
I think we
My
passed the
mistake,
agenda.
my mistake.
Okay,
Okay. That did pass, but it has to come to finance before it can, okay, we have a motion on the floor.
No, you said the ordinance passed and you meant the motion.
I meant the motion had passed, not the ordinance. Okay, we have a motion to accept the agenda as amended with the 2 additions, and we have a second. All those in favor of the agenda say yes. Yes. All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, Mr. Hill, Treasurer's report.
Good evening, everybody. 4.1, first line of the general fund began June, 12.8 million in the bank. We ended the month just a little bit over 12 million. It's not unusual for the middle of summer for revenue to be down in the general fund. 2000 road, again, expenditures came in over revenues, and down to 3017 jail. They spent about what they brought in, and they ended the month with 690,000. If you look down at 3400, the FEMA fund, we got in almost 800,000 in June, and over the next month or so, that will all trickle into the road fund to reimburse them for their expenses. The bottom of the next page, we began June overall with 34.1 million in the bank. We ended June 34.6 million in the bank. I'm going to start getting some readers. 4.2, 1 cent sales tax. The June tax bounced back nicely from the April and May's poor showing. Had a 4.13 increase over prior year, 660,000 came in. 4.3, the quarter-cent jail tax, same situation. We got in 897,000 compared to 861 last year at the same time. Overall, the jail tax is up 2.76 for the year. 4.4, the road sales tax. State tax did a little better than our local taxes. The biggest one of the year, 11.46% increase. That was 147,000, 15,000 over the same time last year. And 4.5, I added this little report. J.P. Harbison was wondering about property taxes, so tried to break it down a little bit, 2017, 2018, and so far this year. You can see and go down to the shaded area through June. In each of those years, you can tell how much the 4.4 millage rate compared to 3.9, how much that has increased, about 800,000 to the general fund so far. And that is all I have.
Are there any questions? Okay, J.P. Bowman.
That 11% increase in road tax, didn't you have any idea about what's going on there?
No, I mean, there was nothing that I know of, because like I said, that's a 5% increase over the best showing of the year, so.
Well, I knew it stood out a lot.
Why it happened, I'm not
Okay.
Other parts of the state spent more money, I guess.
You have any update on internet sales tax,
I'll let you know in October.
October?
That's when, probably the first full month will come in October. I mean, it starts in this month.
Okay,
We won't get it till September, but it'll just be for a couple of weeks.
I see.
So
Okay, thank you.
October, we might
thank you.
have some sort of an idea.
Revenues look good, and the tax increase looks really good. All right. Are there any other questions? If not, thank you, did you?
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Mr. Nelson Driver, Employees Insurance Report.
Good evening, everybody. I like these kind of reports. I don't have to come in with gloom and doom on my face. The Employee Health Fund is holding its own. Excuse me, we entered the beginning of June with just a little under $3 million in the fund. We ended the month of June with a little over $3 million in the fund. So we're holding our own. Things are stable at this point. I hesitate to get too optimistic because you don't know what's going to happen, but right now we're in good shape. We're going to be hearing in a few months from the excess insurance, our stop-loss insurance, and they're going to be doing an examination of the fund before they price us going into 2020 plan year. But I expect that to be fairly stable as well. I'm not looking at any big increases coming. I don't anticipate any recommended changes to the funding portion of the health fund as long as things remain stable as they are now. So that's where we are.
Are there any questions? This is really good news. We did some things when about 3 years.
Starting with plan year 2017.
17, and we had some increase in premiums, and we have not had to infuse any money into the health fund since then.
Yes.
This was the employees were, but, you sometimes have to do things that have to be done to keep things stable. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other comments? Thank you for the good news.
You're welcome.
All right, our comptroller's report, Mr. Worthen.
Okay, over on page 10, the only change in our unappropriated reserve balance was the one ordinance for the quorum court travel expenses. So our net general decreased to $3,474,207. And then going to page 11, the summary statement of operations expenses. Everything should be at about 50%, given steady expenses throughout the year. And the only departments that haven't been discussed before was county health. It's at 68.9% because they have an annual postage mail out that they do every June that spends their whole postage allotment for the year, so that kind of skews their percentage. But they're otherwise, their budget's otherwise in good shape. Then if you go to page 12, for all the general fund, we're at 48.1%, which is within the 50%. And then the other pages are all the special projects funds that pretty much just spend according to the revenue they bring in. So overall, for the entire county, we're at 49% on our spending. so far through June 30th. And that's all I had.
Are there any questions? Thank you. Okay, where are we? All right, we have 7.1. Do we have someone here to speak to this, or an ordinance on transfer? Line item 7.1. You got seven, yes.
I think that maybe when people have something on the agenda, someone should come, or at least give some kind of written explanation. It seems like we're having this happen more often than not.
The planning department put in a budget, it's in your documents, they put in their budget for a car, I think they, for $10,000, got approved, and it went into a different line item than what was actually put on. They had it on line item, I guess, 405, they need to put it on 4003. So that's what the request is.
Do I hear a motion that we approve this?
Second.
Yes.
What's 403 versus, or 4003 versus 4005?
4005 is vehicles, 4003
Buildings.
buildings.
Well, because the explanation says that they already bought a car.
That's correct. But the line item wasn't on, so we had to
No,
transfer it from.
it says they're requesting an additional $10,000
No.
to purchase an additional vehicle.
No, it's
So that
not
doesn't
additional.
sound, that's what it
It's-
says
it's-
on the memo.
That's wrong. It's not additional.
It says I'm requesting an additional $10,000 in the 2019 budget for the purchase of a used car.
That was in
October
2019.
1, 2018.
That was requested in,
Oh, okay.
that makes sense now?
All right, are you finished, JP
Hey,
Madison?
okay.
JP Johnson?
I went through the same thought pattern this morning. That request is dated in October of 18, which I assume was the request to get it in the budget.
That's correct.
And then it got in the wrong line item.
That's correct.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve this. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Motion passed. All right. Number 8, an ordinance recognizing and appropriating $2,250 to the Crisis Stabilization Fund. This is 8.1. I understand this is money that has been given to the, or donated to the stabilization.
Yeah, and I put the wrong number in there. It should be
Okay, so we need to make a correction then of the $2,250 should be $2,550. Do I hear a motion? Yes.
I move that we amend the
Okay, to the,
ordinance to $2,550, right?
Second.
all right. All those in favor in the amendment say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. All right. Go back to the passage of the ordinance. Are there any questions? All right. What?
Yeah, well, y'all, you,
I didn't hear what she said.
public after y'all talk, the public gets comment time.
Oh, okay, now, okay. Are there any public comments? If not, then we'll vote on the ordinance. All in favor of the ordinance, 8.1, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right,
Madam Chairman,
yes,
can I interrupt for just a minute?
yes.
I've been cleaning up on my computer and found where our attorney gave us some rules for putting things on a consent agenda. Do you remember doing that?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we ever got around to trying that, did we? Did we do it?
I don't think it ever passed.
I
We did
thought
the
it was
consent
all-
agenda, and then something happened that nothing was going on the consent agenda.
I think we just forgot about it, because I think this was already provided in law. We didn't have to pass anything, the way you presented it.
Yeah,
So I'd like to try it out and put this on a consent agenda then.
Yeah, I think it got really complicated. I believe, we did try it, but for some reason, we abandoned it early on in the stage after we passed it. So if we want to try it again, I'll be happy to do so. Honestly, I'd have to go back and look at my notes.
Well, I brought the notes you gave me in copies for everybody. And I'm not trying to push it or anything. It just seems like some of these routine financial matters that we deal with could be dealt with in one fell swoop in a quorum court meeting when we may have many meatier issues. So I thought we just maybe forgot about it because we get busy. But do you think it's worth trying tonight with this item, Mr. Lester, or would you rather
I feel this is
research
a
it?
committee meeting, and the consent agenda was for the quorum court meeting.
Well, the rules there say it has to be, a motion has to be made in committee to put it on the consent agenda for the next quorum court meeting.
All right, I understand what you're trying to do.
So I was just trying to find out if that might be appropriate tonight to try that.
Okay, on the,
Let me just go ahead and,
C is, okay.
let me
I have
make a motion
process.
then that we
It's not on the agenda.
put the motion that we just passed, recommending approval of this ordinance on a consent agenda for the next meeting pending research by our attorney. Okay.
All right, I guess that's a motion. Do I have a second? Second. All right, any further discussion?
Just
Mr.
to,
Dunn.
so you're just grouping non-controversial items, then we can pass it quicker. Let's go.
Thank you.
Well, and
All right,
it
moving
says-
forward, okay.
We get vote.
Okay, all those in favor of having the consent agenda with items added? Oh, okay, yes.
I do appreciate that. You know, if we can save time, yes. But I think it's, because there was a snag, I think we need to have a little bit more discussion on this and bring the newer JPs on board of what we, in the previous court, had discussed, because it wasn't with this court, correct? If I may address Justice Sue Madison, it was a previous court that we had attempted to pass this.
I think, well, I shouldn't.
So I would prefer a better discussion to fully understand exactly what we're doing, and this item was not on the agenda.
It's not.
Just a minute. I think you explained what a consent agenda is. Non-controversial items are grouped together and voted at the quorum court meeting and passed. Now, so this item has been suggested that we put this on a consent agenda, and there may be other things later. All right, Mr. Dickens.
I'm good, let's go.
Oh, okay. All right. Do we need public comment?
No, you just need to vote. Because the motion's just.
Okay, we have a motion to do a consent agenda. On 8.1. All those in, okay, I did have, yes, a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, this item will go on the consent agenda. All right. Number 10.
No.
Oh, okay, number 9, an ordinance recognizing and appropriating revenue in the amount of $798,000 $175.97 in the road department budget for 2019. Do you want to speak to this, Mr. Gales?
As you know, we do FEMA projects on bridges out of our pocket, and then we get reimbursed. This started in 2017. We spent money in 2017, 2018, and we received $798,000 plus. Now then, going back, we've been spending all year on the floods that we've just had and on Brush Creek. So in order to get the road department back on even keel and bring the numbers, which we have a lot of red items, back to where that we've been taking out of, this will allow the bookkeepers and the comptrollers to balance everything and get our road department back into positive line items. So that's what it's all about.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
move adoption.
All right, I have, is there any other discussion? Now, do
I have a comment.
Public comment. What?
I'd just like to say how thankful we are that they finally paid us some of what they owe us.
Yes.
Maybe the members that went to Washington haven't
Had
been
an effect on it, okay. Yeah, okay, do I,
Do you want this on the consent agenda? I would do it, I'd go ahead and do it, pass it.
okay, all
I'd
those,
recommend go ahead and passing it to the consent agenda now, and then you don't have to do two separate ones.
Can we throw 7.1 on
Oh, we gotta do public comment. Huh?
okay, public comment,
7.1 on there too?
Sure.
well, yes.
It has
Your
a-
name, please, and
Sarah Moore,
address.
Sarah Moore, Fayetteville. I just wanted to thank the folks that went to DC because I believe that some folks spoke to Senator Bozeman and talked about that our funds were getting tied up. And I love to see that. I know we put an investment putting you guys going up to DC and representing us, and you did a great job. So I applaud the folks that I think, especially JP Jenkins, I think she actually saw him in the airport, and it just kind of happened last minute that they got an appointment with him. So I appreciate you doing that and going. I know that can take some courage sometimes to go up to folks, but I think ultimately it benefited our county. So I appreciate that.
All right. So, do I need a motion to put this on the consent? We just amend it.
I'll move that we pass this ordinance and put it on the consent agenda.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passed. All right. Now, we have number 10, an ordinance anticipating and recognizing and appropriating additional revenue in the amount of $112,053.54 in the sheriff's budget for 2019. Mr. Cantrell.
Madam Chairman, this is a reimbursement ordinance that we do every quarter for special events that we work, and so we're just asking that this money be reappropriated back into the designated line items.
All right. All right. We have a motion to pass this ordinance and a second. Yes.
We'll just put it on the consensus.
Oh, you want to put it on the consent agenda? All right. So, all right. All those, okay, public comment. All right. Okay. All those in favor of putting this on the consent agenda, say aye. All those opposed? All right. Ready for number 10 or 11? We have an ordinance appropriating $24,518.50 in the quorum court's budget for 2019. Mr. Lester, do you want to explain this?
This is an ordinance to pay I've attached the invoices to everybody for the bond counsel. This was the bond counsel, these are the attorneys that did all the paperwork, and all everything required in order for us to enter into the guaranteed energy cost savings contract with Johnson Controls.
So I have two concerns about this ordinance. One is that it looks like the money was already committed, and we're now being asked to pay $25,000 roughly for an expense we were not aware of. And the second issue is that I don't have any idea why it's coming out of the quorum court's budget, because we certainly didn't hire bond counsel. This is a part of the Buildings and Grounds project. We passed a project that was supposed to have no cost, and now we're being hit with a $25,000 bill. So I will not be supporting this. And it's beyond me that it's a quorum court expense. It seems like maybe we're just playing games and trying to say the quorum court's budget's going up while other people's are not.
JP Sue Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When this was handed out at the beginning of the meeting, I looked at it and I thought, we were all so in love with Johnson Controls and how smoothly that went and how great that contract looked. And nobody said anything at all about this. It's a little bewildering. Neither Johnson Controls nor our county people. And I know in the great scheme of things, this is not a huge expense, especially on a night when we've been raking in money, but I feel a little bit cheated somehow that the deal wasn't quite as great maybe as presented, so I'm struggling here.
JP Butch Pond.
Well, I'm struggling now more than I was when we got swished away with a contract that I didn't approve of. But it's a done deal now. The business has been done. We got to pay the bills. So I'll be supporting this. Thank you. I move that we we approve this.
There's a second. Well, I guess it dies for a lack of a second. I don't know how that can be.
I'll second it, but I have a question.
Okay.
I have a $7,500 and a $1,700, both going there, but without an explanation of the line item. Could you tell me where the line item is that we're
Taking this money
Taking
out
this
of,
money
it
out
would
of-
have to come out of unappropriated fund.
the general fund?
That's the only place it can come from.
So does Building and Ground have money for this?
Well,
I'm
I
just
don't
saying,
imagine
I'm
it
just
was
asking who designated it out of general fund, and when this, if it, instead of Building and Grounds fund?
You'll have to ask Mr.
Our
Lester.
budget, the quorum court budget?
I don't
Or
know.
unappropriated reserves?
I think it's
Which budget-
irrelevant.
yeah.
It's irrelevant who it goes to, as long as it's paid. It can go to my budget, I don't care. The quorum court approved the moving forward on this project, and part of it was the funding and the financing part was the reason that this isn't like anything else. And so it is part of what the process on these, on these. And so, yeah, I'm giving you everything that I have.
Okay.
I knew that we had bond counsel because it requires bond counsel. It's just like any project that we've ever done, the historic courthouse renovation, you have bonds. Any bonds you've ever issued, you've got to hire bond counsel. We do RFQs for bond counsel for that purpose. And so the information that we have here is everything that was sent to me, and I'm just giving it to you.
And I completely support.
Because this wasn't budgeted,
project.
because this project,
Okay.
And so I don't know, but I would speculate that the Buildings and Grounds doesn't even have a special legal line item. Sometimes, from my understanding in talking to Mr. McSpadden, who was the attorney with Wright Lindsay in Little Rock, who has done numerous ones of these for various entities around the state, that there was a question that came up by the other attorney at one point about, is this coming out of the money that we borrowed or not? And he didn't write that into the paperwork or to the ordinance that we had, and therefore he couldn't submit it as part of that because the ordinance that was passed did not include it. And I
Okay.
guess that could have been an option. I have no idea. I mean, I trust that these guys that do this all the time, that's why they do it, because this is what they do every day, that they, took care of everything. It would have to be paid. It was going to be paid one way or the other. It was
Certainly.
either paid from the money we borrowed or paid here. I'm just passing it along to the quorum court.
I
I'm
understand.
going to make
Could-
a suggestion
May-
that it be paid out of unappropriated reserves, not out of the quorum court budget.
Well-
Professional service line item in the quorum court budget. I
Madam
mean, I've
Chair?
never seen that before.
Um,
Yes.
The second part to my question in all of this is, if we get audited by the state on all this funds, I want to be sure that we have that in the right bucket and not having to scramble around. And if I could ask our comptroller if we could get some guidance on this as to what would be appropriate and legal
Okay.
for that, if I may.
Yes.
Grounds budget has $350,000 budgeted for other professional services. They could clearly pay for this. I just looked it
I
up online.
still would like to talk to our
Okay,
comptroller.
Mr. Worthing, would
Mr.
you
Worthing. Or if we
please
can get some
come
information on it
forward and
before.
answer that to the best that you can?
Well, we just have to have a budget to pay the bill from, and if we're gonna pay it from the quorum court budget or attorney's budget or whoever, we would just take it out of unappropriated reserves, but then you have to appropriate the amount in a budget to pay the bill from. So, it's two separate things. You take money from unappropriated reserves in general, then you transfer it to the line item to pay the bill from, and then there shouldn't be any problem with the auditors paying it that way. And the only other option would be to pay it from an existing budget where the money's already appropriated. But if that department didn't anticipate that expense to their budget, it'll put them in a bind, but that's pretty much my input.
When it comes to professional services on line items that everybody has, there seems to be a little bit of latitude, just a little bit, not much, on professional services. A lot of it is subscriptions and association fees and whatnot. But if this is a buildings and grounds project, and they have that professional line item or money budgeted, unless they have already allocated the money for specific purposes, then I understand. But logically, I feel that this is a buildings and grounds project and not a quorum court project.
Yeah, that'd be up to y'all to wherever y'all wanted to appropriate the money to, or if y'all wanted the bill to be paid from someone else's budget, then, if maybe once the project gets rolling, Building and Grounds will have reduced utilities that could cover the bill later, and it wouldn't, but I don't know if that would happen by the end of the year or not.
Okay, let me ask you, if we were to do this out of unappropriated reserves, as Madam Chair suggested, and then have buildings and grounds, once he is able to come before us and give an explanation, can we transfer the money out of his professional line item to pay to unappropriated reserves to cover this cost?
Yes.
Well, normally you would appropriate the money, you would take the money out of unappropriated reserves and appropriate the money in a particular budget, and it'd be budget neutral because the budget would be increased by the amount of the expense. So it wouldn't really matter to the individual budget how it was done. But if the bill's just not going to be appropriated, or the money not be taken out of unappropriated reserves and just paid from their existing budget, then there would there'd be no need for this ordinance to appropriate the money.
So then we wouldn't need an ordinance to appropriate the money, it would simply come out of their designated line item.
Yeah, we would just need somebody to take responsibility for the bill and code it to their budget, and then it'd be paid from their existing budget if there wasn't money appropriated to cover it. But it would.
Okay, Mr. Lester wants to make a clarification.
First, I don't want anybody to think there was any hidden agenda on my part. I draft all of these ordinances to put it in the quorum court's budget. I had to put it somewhere in a line item. That's it. There was no ill will or hidden agenda on that. Secondly, I did not look to see if Buildings and Grounds had it in their budget to pay, because I just wanted to make sure that if money needs to be appropriated, we get the bill paid in a timely manner. And if that's the case, it has to be done by you. I am more than happy to change this to Buildings and Grounds, and also look, and if they have the money to pay this at quorum court, I can let everybody know it's not an issue. We can take it off the agenda. It doesn't have to happen. But there was nothing hidden behind that. I just wanted to make sure this bill didn't slip by and we get a letter from a collection agency or something saying we didn't pay our bill.
All right. Okay. Ms. Jenkins, J.P. Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to make a motion, because this was the Building and Grounds vision, that we appropriate the $24,518.50 to Department 0108, Buildings and Ground, to line item 3009, which is other professional services, in which they have $350,000.
Okay, Butch?
You made
Just a minute.
I recognize that J.P. Jenkins has made another motion when we have a motion on the floor.
Motion to amend, I'm sorry.
A motion to amend. I want to make one comment here. That Mr. Lester putting this on ours, I feel is appropriate, because it'll be less confusing at budget time and easier for us to recall why this is there and why this is in our budget. And I also want to remind the court that no department in Washington County government should already have that money in their budget, because we were not, we didn't have this to start with. This was not a project that any of us knew about or was aware of to start with, so we couldn't have approved this to go in any department budget. And with that being said, in further discussion on this, I'm obliged to withdraw my motion.
All right. Okay, you're withdrawing your motion to pass.
And recognize that
Okay,
Mr.
okay.
Lester did the appropriate thing as far as this
But
situation
you're
goes.
withdrawing your motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Somebody else can
Okay,
take it
now
up.
we have an amendment on the floor, but we don't have a second, so. All right. Sue Madison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, do we have anything to discuss now that the motion's been withdrawn by the person who made it?
No, well,
I don't
no,
think so.
not unless we have another motion.
Well, I was going to discuss the issue, but I guess I'll pass since we no longer have anything to discuss.
Okay. JP, Eva Madison.
I would move to postpone this until next month's budget and finance agenda, until we can figure out if Buildings and Grounds has money to pay for this. To say that they didn't anticipate this expense, this court authorized them to go forward with this project last year. We encouraged them to go forward with it, so they had to envision this. Having $350,000 in a budget, I would think that you maybe would think about how much the projects you have ongoing will cost. And I can assure you, as a lawyer who tries to collect bills from clients all the time, we don't come after you with bill collectors in 30 days. I'm still trying to collect from some of my clients from, last July. So it takes a word I shouldn't say,
Okay.
Aggressive lawyer to sue clients that quickly. So
All
I
right,
think we have
let's,
time.
We have a motion, and did I hear a second? That it be postponed to the next,
I do have a question.
yes.
Is this time sensitive, Mr. Lester? Is there a date, a due date?
You have what I have.
All right. Any other discussion? All right, we have a motion to postpone and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
All right. All those in favor, raise your hand. Seven. All those opposed? 3. Well, we have people not
I think it's a
voting.
committee of it's a majority of the
It's those voting in committee.
present. Right.
All right.
Madam Chair,
Any abstentions? All right.
before we leave this issue, ma'am,
Well, it passed. It will be postponed until the next meeting. All right.
thank you.
Question?
Okay, Madam Chair, okay, in preparation for the postponement, I have some other questions as well. I don't clearly understand, was this bond counsel for both sides of this agreement? Or was this just our side of the agreement? And if it was just our side of the agreement, why did we find a Missouri attorney to assist us? I'm actually proud of some attorneys in Washington County. And I know bond counseling may be a
Well-
area of specialty, but this has been such a surprise tonight that I think we need some more answers. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
we act like this is a surprise. If you would have read all the documents of Johnson and Control whenever they give you that packet that thick, and when that gentleman sat right there and told us what was going to happen and how we was going to pay for it, how we was going to do this and how we was going to do that, you wouldn't be sitting here arguing this stuff. You would know that you owe the money because it was in all that fine print and fine writing. And another big surprise you're going to get at the end of the year, how much you're going to have to put with your budget to pay the rest of the stuff. So it's
Okay.
not a surprise, it's out there. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lemmy. All right, let's see where we are. We are on number, what? Yes. Okay. Ombudsman, we don't have an ordinance drawn up, but we put this on the agenda to discuss what we're gonna do with it. Okay, so I would like for us to go on and ask Mr. Lester to have something prepared by next Thursday, if at all possible, so that we can move forward with this, because I think Mr. Helder needs some help, and I hope that this is going to help some. Okay, it's open for discussion, yes.
I would make a motion. I think we actually asked him to write an ordinance last night. The committee did. I believe that was what the chairman, J.P. Johnson, said. But I think what this committee should do is ask that Mr. Lester have it drafted by Friday so that it actually could be published as part of an agenda packet, and that it include a small appropriation. I just don't know how much to get us started. I don't think we have to appropriate any large amount. I think we should just appropriate a small sum to kind of get us going. So I was trying to look and see didn't he say it was $60 an hour and he was gonna do no more than 20 a week? So that's
Right.
$1,200 potentially a week. So if we gave it, I don't know,
How many weeks?
half the year would be $31,000, so we could do 15,000 to get it going. So,
weeks would be 14,400.
okay, well, just to get it going so that we have something meaty to put on the agenda for discussion, so.
All right,
That was
I have
kind of a
a
long-winded
motion,
motion.
and I have an amount of $15,000 to, or
That's right at 90 days.
90 days. So that would be what, 14,400?
14,400 is 84 days or 12
Oh, okay. So 15, okay. We have okay, do we have a second? All right. We have a motion for Mr. Lester to draft an ordinance, and the amount of money in that ordinance will be $15,000 to get the ombudsman project started. All right, further discussion? By Friday, okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Okay, motion passed. Unless we want to show of hands. We had two voted against, and you want to show of hands? All right, I've already declared, I'm sorry, Butch. The motion passed. All right, is there anything else okay, public comment? Oh, goodness gracious. Budget process. This is, okay. I've been on the court, when I finish up this term, 16 years, and we've done the budget many different ways. So this is my suggestion, that I talk with the elected officials and department heads, and that they have all of their budgets ready by the end of September. And then we'll start the process. So I need your direction of how do we want to do this process. Since we have so many new people on the court, what I'm going to suggest is that we bring in the budgets, we compare the court, that we compare the budgets, and then if we have any questions of the elected officials or department heads, that they come in and explain what those questions are. Or we could have you write your questions out and they could respond in writing. So what is your pleasure? Eva, Miss JP, Eva Madison.
JP Eva, I'll answer to whatever. So having done it a lot of different ways, because there are so many new people on the court, I found that the first couple of cycles, hearing from, I know it's a pain, and it does make it a little longer of a process, but hearing from every department is very educational and helpful. So I want you to think about that. As someone who's done it before, I don't know that I would necessarily favor that, but certainly with the number of new folks, I think there's some benefits to it, because once you get that full packet, it's a little overwhelming. If you've looked at the full budget, it is. The other thing, though, is that once you get it, we can also sort of have a sit down together and say, the library looks good, or these ones that look kind of non-controversial, almost move them to like a consent agenda, because there's certainly ones that fall out. But I would encourage, I don't want anybody to really foreclose hearing from people at this point, because it's so helpful to learn about the process, because this, I think, is our most important function. The other thing that I would say, though, is I do want to allow, and Madam Chair, I'm sort of asking this of you in our process, is that there always be an opportunity for the JPs to ask questions concerning any budget, because last year there were some questions that I had about several budget items that there was a flat-out refusal to answer questions, and there was never an opportunity to get answers on things. And I learned about things later that I was surprised to know. And one of the things I'll tell you is, for instance, I was talking to a local agency, much like ORT or the Beaver Water District, these little local organizations that we're a part of, that we sit on, that we provide money to. They told me that their funding had increasingly gone down in the past 2 years, and that was something that I had no idea about because it was something that was not brought to our attention. And so I think not only should we be allowed to ask questions, but I think that it's always helpful for whenever there's a change to a line item, that department offers some explanation for that in writing. So when we get the budget, if it's an increase, you see it. So overall, I think that new people, I think you should consider wanting to hear from everybody. I think that we should all be able to ask questions of anybody. I think that any changes down, I think people down or up, we should really have an explanation for why, because I would like to know, for instance, if we're cutting somebody that I didn't know we were cutting. Like last year, I noticed that the contract amount for the quorum courts budget went down, and that's because we were ending our contract with the city of Fayetteville, so we're no longer on TV. And that was something that was important to me. So a down sometimes matters too. The other thing is that I think that we should carve out perhaps a separate process for capital expenses and personnel. Sometimes we've had it where everybody asking for new people and everybody asking for capital comes on the same day. I think that we should do at least with the same budget on the same day. But we need to sort of treat new positions and capital differently, because capital are their own category. So those are just some things to think about that I offer. But I would ask, Madam Chair, that we make sure we have the opportunity to ask questions of anybody, and that those explanations be given for any up or down when we get the packet. Thank you.
Well, I think, this definitely needs to be an educational process, and I think everybody needs to be able to ask questions to understand what's going on. And I think what I'm going to do is that, we'll take a budget, and we'll go over that budget, and then if you have questions, we'll ask either that department head or that elected official to come in and do the explanation. I do not want to get in, and I know some of you disagree with me, but I do not want to get in trying to micromanage. When someone asks for an item, I think we should listen to their explanation, but I don't think that we need to disagree with them. You may disagree, yes, but they are the ones that are running the departments, and they are the ones that feel that they need the money. And we've seen some things in the past, and as chair, if I see any of this start, I will call a point of order and ask you not to proceed. Anyone that becomes, there's a difference between asking good questions and becoming hostile. There's a difference in that. And we've had some things happen in the past that I just do not want to happen again. We've had people that hate to come before the quorum court because they felt that they were drilled and that they were questioned about their integrity and everything else. And that we will not allow, okay? I want everyone to be very professional. Ask your questions and don't argue. If you want to argue later, you may do that, but not during the quorum, during the budget process. Yes, Mr. J.P. Duncan.
I don't know what the format is that it's received. I've obviously been on the other side where I see it, but can we ask that the budget be sent, obviously it'll be by line item, but year over year, so this year, last year, in
Yes.
Excel format with a percent change and absolute change. And then a notes column as well. So if someone wants to explain a notes, like it might answer a question if you see like a 47% increase in a line item, just making one up, and someone just has a quick note right next to it that says, buying a truck, old truck broke down, then all of a sudden everybody goes, oh, perfect, they're buying a truck, we don't have to ask the question.
Okay, Mr. Worthen is putting those materials together now. We will have this year's budget and maybe 18's budget also, and the proposed budget for 20.
In Excel format?
No, I don't know if it's going to be in Excel. It's going to be in a book. You're going to get a paper book with everything in it.
Well, let's jump to 2019 and let's put it in Excel format.
Here.
And, okay.
There are Excel.
I don't
Some
need
of
a-
us are not as computer savvy as you are.
Okay, I don't need a print off. Let's save the trees. Send me a file.
Okay, well, some of us need to have hands-on so we can take things out and compare.
Sure.
All right, all right. What was the motion? Oh, we had a, yeah. Chairs are going to ignore that, sorry. Yes, Mr. Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know what? Last year, we had the books, and we had routine updates. And I think if we'd go ahead and publish this thing on electronic format, it'd be far easier to update everything and be consistent numbers, all our pages together, so that we don't have to thumb through the book trying to change everything and
Well, we have computers and we, but we're going to have both, okay?
yes, ma'am.
Lance, J.P. Johnson.
I've watched the budget process from that chair next to Bobby Hill for 4 or 5 years. And one of the things I would like to see is us to get it approved before December 19th. That's the last possible day we can approve it. And I understand what Justice Madison said. I sat back there on December 22nd last year and I listened to the questions and I said, boy, I sure don't understand all of what was just said. And it was real obvious after the fact that not everybody on the quorum court understand all that was said. And I think waiting till September to start this process is about 60 days late.
Well,
I
I think we have plenty of time to do this.
Do I have the floor?
Go
Do I have
on.
the- do I have the
didn't
floor?
mean to interrupt.
I'm going to say it again. I think starting at the end of September is about 60 days too late, because there's 9 of us that have got to dig into this thing and understand it. There's 15 of us that got to dig into it and understand it. And I know personally, I look at budgets every day, and I've spent a lot of time on that website looking at old budgets, and it isn't easy to figure out, and if we think we're going to do it in 60 days, I think we're kidding ourselves.
Well, okay, I can ask that the elected officials have their budgets ready by the end of August. I mean, if we feel that we're going to need that much time. Now, I don't know. I have already, I've visited with a couple of them, but it was not actually a formal, okay, Ms. Heckey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If those that can, turn it in by the end of July, have them turn it in. It doesn't have to be a complete budget, but if it's departmental, at least we can start looking at it for those that do have it ready and ready to go, if at all possible.
Okay, we'll work on that. I will
Okay,
talk
if at all
with, I
possible,
will
there are some
make
that already-
that,
They can
and
do that.
I think what we probably can do is start with some of the simple budgets like the library, some of these budgets that are almost the same year after year except for increases.
If those
All
are
right.
ready to go,
And
we can
we've got
start
to
on
have
those.
also Mr. Johansson to come in and explain to us the salary situation. What I'm proposing is that we do a 3% raise, and that come from the carryover that occurs at the end of the year. I'm concerned about the census. As all of you know, we lost about $1.5 million per year on the last census, and we did not catch up. It was almost 6 years before we caught up. The economy is much better now, so, you know, it usually takes a couple of years to catch up. So our reserves are down to $3 million. We cannot continue to spend more money, more money than we're creating or is coming in. It's an issue. All right, anything else? Yes. J.P. Madison.
Okay, I want to apologize. I had some more copies of this business about the consent agenda, and I didn't get them all passed out. They were hiding in a magazine, and
Well, thank you.
please make sure the press gets one if they want it. I apologize.
Butch?
I just want to say it early on, and I know everybody's attention span's shorter now than it was earlier in the meeting. But I'll make this, this is very early to bring it up, but make note, please, ma'am, because of so many unknowns and talking about the census reminded me of it, that's a great big unknown that it always creates for us. It's in the near future. But one of the things that we do have that is a known, well, it's better known than anything else as far as revenue coming in. When we approve the assessment or the property tax, when we approve that millage, the property tax millage, as soon as we approve that, we have one thing there that's fairly well known with Mr. Hill's help. One time that I'm thinking of, it was a mistake when the quorum court passed a budget before we approved the millage. And therefore...
Okay, and the millage has to be approved in November, correct? Okay. Well...
All I'm saying is we have, it's a little easier to get it's a little easier to kind of get a grasp of what we got coming in and going out. If the millage is approved before we pass the budget.
Okay, but we need to get through the budget process.
Sure.
And we need to understand the budget, and we need to be, to watch for changes. All right, Ms. Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a new member on the quorum court, you had said that we would go through line item, the budget, and if we had questions, we could mark those down and then ask.
Well, that was the way I suggested
Okay, the way
we
you
do
suggested.
that.
So if we did it that way, would the people who needed to be in attendance to ask those questions, or would we have to
Well,
come up
no,
with those
we
questions
would
and then
have to
ask
call
them
them
at a-
in later to answer those questions.
That's why I kind of prefer what J.P. Madison had suggested, in having them come and maybe give just a brief overview of their budgets themselves, like one at a time, and that way we get to know them.
We've had some problems with that in the past, and that's why I'm trying to quorum court members to argue and look at the line items.
I'm just trying to think of what would be the best use of time. And in the past, what have you guys?
This is why I'm having this discussion,
Right.
is so that I can get the feel of what the court wants to do.
I want to be efficient, personally.
But we need to be efficient, and we're gonna, and we need to have those budgets, and we really need to look at those budgets before we get to the budget meeting.
Sure.
So that we know what's in that budget. So I will take all of your suggestions, and I see the consensus is that everybody wants to get to work as soon as possible. And I think, with the number of new people, that's a good suggestion. J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing I think will be helpful, if we get the situation squared away where the cities start paying us for the overage on the jail, that's probably going to take care of about $1 million that's been going out of our general budget. So that'll help with that census issue. The other thing I wondered about, if Mr. Lesser could tell us about Heritage Farms when that's coming to trial. Don't know? Okay, thank you.
Are there any other suggestions? Yes, Mr.
I
Fleming.
suggest we adjourn.
You suggest, make a motion. Oh, public comment. Sorry.
Hi, thank you for having the conversation around the budget. That's been maybe one of my frustrations as I stepped in January and started to trying to get more involved in my county and understanding what the budget process had been like. My background is probably similar to what Sam does. We started our budget processes in the corporate world. The minute the new fiscal year basically starts, you're planning for the next year. And so I first want to say thank you for having this discussion and saying you want to get started as soon as possible, because I agree with J.P. Johnson that I feel like, that 60 days is too late, starting, in September. So, starting now as soon as possible, and encouraging all the departments to get as much information to you as possible, because I think there are a lot of new faces and you're going to have a lot of questions. And you should have questions because you want to dig into what our taxpayer dollars, what we're getting, what we're using those for and what they're being spent on. The other thing that I wanted to ask about is for next calendar year, next fiscal year, if we could go ahead and set what the date's going to be, that we go ahead and talk to those departments. And if we want to start making our budget cycle actually be like, starting in June, we're going to start reviewing the budgets to go into the next fiscal year. Let's go ahead and tell those department heads that now so that they can plan and they won't get surprised. And so, in April, you can start maybe reminding them, and then by, June, they could actually come to you with a budget versus you having to, go to them and say, okay, when do you think you can give me this information? So I just wanted to add that to the conversation. And then the other, the technology that came up earlier, that's been an incredible frustration because you can't always actually attend these things in person, and getting physical documents is very hard, but if it can be in Excel format, and it actually, my other question is about it being provided publicly as well, because the public wants to be involved and give feedback. So if it's in Excel spreadsheets, people that do have that expertise, like some of the folks do on this court, they might actually be able to give you good feedback to work with as well, and that would be nice. I had something else I was going to say, but I forgot it. It's left me, but thank you.
All right, okay. Any other public comment?
Beth Koger, Fayetteville. I second what Sarah just said about the public getting, if we could have copies of what y'all get on the Excel spreadsheet about the budget, we'd appreciate that. I want to mention about the bond fee, the $24,518.50. That bothers me. Someone said that it was in the contract. I asked for a copy of that contract, and I never got it, but, I could have followed up on it, and I didn't do that. I might have noticed that in the small print, I don't know, but I take it from the discussion tonight that most people here were surprised about that amount. And did I understand correctly that we're paying out of our county funds now because the bond council failed to put something into the ordinance? Is that correct, or did I misunderstand that?
I just think that's, anytime you have bond counsel, there's always a charge for it, and I think that's the charge that, every time we've ever had one, we've had an expense.
I understand that, but And also, did people here know about this? Did you, JPs, know about it? Oh, is that not proper to ask that? Okay, was it an hourly fee, time and expense, or was it a flat fee based on the amount of the bonds?
Mr. Lester would have to answer that. I would think probably,
Hourly fee on one of them, and it looks like a flat fee on the other? No. Based on the documents that I've handed out, it looks like one is an hourly fee, and it looks like the other one is was a straight, just, set amount, yeah.
Could we get copies of those? Could the public have copies of those
They're
items?
sitting right over there, absolutely.
Okay, I'll do that. Okay. The other thing, let me see. Is there a copy of that? Okay, who signed the contract with the bond council?
I assume the county judge did.
Do you know that, Mr. Lester?
County judge has to sign all contracts.
So he's-
And
okay.
so the contracts were signed, all signed by the county judge, yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Thank you for your input on the budget. We'll get started on it. Yes.
Need to move to adjourn.
Second.
No. They was